Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Create and Consume, a podcast about what we make, watch, and buy in the era of digital content. I'm your host, Austen Tosone. 2024 has been a crazy year, to say the least. I mean, I turned 30 this year. I also feel like I've just experienced some of my highest highs and also my lowest lows in the last 365 days. But as someone who likes to, in general, look on the bright side and find ways to enjoy every day and just be very grateful to be here, I wanted to put together a best of 2024 episode for you all. And what I've done is rounded up my top five whatever's, my top five things of the year, my top five books and TV shows, pop culture moments, places traveled, and so much more, and put them all together into one fun recap episode. So that is exactly what we are going to get into today. Before I get into all of my top fives, though, let's do a little create and consume. So, one thing that I created this week was lots of snacks and apps for our annual holiday soiree. And one in particular that was way too easy to put together, but I feel like makes you look like you can juggle, 10 different balls while you are hosting people is this new bruschetta recipe. And the recipe is get a French baguette from Trader Joe's and cut it up, put those slices on a baking sheet with tin foil, bake for like 7 minutes, and coat the little pieces of bread with salt and pepper, a little garlic powder, and a drizzle of olive oil. And then Trader Joe's also sells this pre made bruschetta sauce. All I had to do was spoon it on to the pieces of bread, and it was so cute. And I displayed it on an anthropology platter that a family friend actually gifted us last year for our wedding. I feel like I was straight up Martha Stewart. So if you need a simple hosting idea, if you have people visiting you in the next few weeks or in the next few months, that is a great one to have on hand. I'm also still creating some end of year brand work, a lot of just last minute things that have popped up that I'm waiting for approvals on and whatnot. So just keep an eye on all of my different platforms, and hopefully you'll see some of that soon too. And then as far as what I'm consuming this week, I don't really have like a specific thing to point you towards. I feel like I am just consuming a lot of different content and opinions and what to do's about the looming potential TikTok ban in the US. I'm sure many of you are probably already aware of what's going on, but essentially TikTok is set to be banned next month if, I don't know, something doesn't happen quickly. If the Supreme Court doesn't grant it an extension, Biden could grant it a 90-day extension, from what I understand, if they look like they have a plan to sell, which from what I've read, they do not. And they is ByteDance to either sell or divest TikTok, at least the US portion of it, from ByteDance as a company. And with all that being said, I think the potential of a banned TikTok is more real now than it ever has been. If you are a content creator, hopefully you already, have your eggs in multiple baskets. Hopefully you have a blog or an email newsletter. But if you don't for some reason, or you're not actively sharing your content on another platform, the next few weeks are probably going to be a really important time to try to transfer your TikTok audience over to a new platform, or just to start posting and try to build on a new platform yourself. And I know I just said I like to look on the bright side of things, but I actually am very convinced that this is a real possibility, that we are not going to be able to update the TikTok app, get new downloads, get new updates, and that it could potentially really just stop working at some point, which I think is incredibly sad and also, goes against the First Amendment. But at the end of the day, this industry has changed. Platforms have come and gone before, and we continue to move on. So I would love to hear from you all if you have thoughts about the TikTok ban, and if you have any plans in place for what you will do, if anything, if the app goes away. Feel free to comment below on YouTube if that's where you're watching this episode. Send me an email. It's createandconsumepodcast@gmail.com, or just DM me, reach me any of the ways that you normally would, because I think that we are all going to have a holly jolly holiday, and then we're going to come back and be faced with a potentially harsh reality about the app. So fingers crossed, and I hope I'm wrong, but it'll be an interesting few weeks in this industry for sure. One last thing before I get into my top 5 countdowns across lots of different categories. I just wanted to let you all know that this episode is going to be the last episode of 2024, if you can believe it. And I have not taken a week off since starting the podcast back in May. I'm really proud of my consistency and how much I've been able to show up on here, also publish all my episodes on YouTube, and also write corresponding blog post recaps for each and every episode so far. This is episode 32, so I am taking what I think is a well-deserved and much-needed break next week. So there will not be a new episode on Thursday, December 26th. I will be back for you with a new episode in January on the 2nd for the new year. And thank you so much for supporting the show. You are supporting the show right now by listening. You can also support the show by leaving a review or sharing it on your own social media channels if you haven't done so yet. All of these things, especially word of mouth and your recommendations, help get the show out to more people. So I just wanted to, at the top of this episode, say thank you for such a great 2024. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a listener. And let's talk about some of the best things that happened this year. Okay, my top 5 TV shows. This is a really hard category for me to narrow down because I absolutely love TV shows. Spoiler alert, there is no category for movies in this episode because I didn't even see 5 new movies this year. And one of them that I watched recently was Hot Frosty, and that cannot possibly make the list. So let's focus on the things that I did watch and that I did love. And I do have my top 5 here, but then I do also have some honorable mentions just because there was so much good television this year, a lot of which I forgot actually happened in this calendar year. There's so many things that, especially because I'm a big rewatcher, I thought came out in 2023 or even before that. So I had to do a lot of fact checking to make sure that all of these things came out this year. I should also add, too, that some of these top 5 are very specifically ranked, and some of them are in no particular order slash just I loved them generally. So I'll try my best to make sure I specify for each of my mini lists, which is the case. Number 5 on my list of best TV shows from 2024 was season 3 of Bridgerton. I absolutely love Bridgerton. I don't think that's any surprise. I'm literally named after Jane Austen. So all of these Regency era vibes and all of the very intricate social relationships, kind of like an old school Gossip Girl, are just things that I absolutely love in a television show. I think they're great plot devices. I think they make for great characters. And in this season, I really feel like we got to see a wide spectrum of emotions and great acting from all of the different characters, specifically Nicola, who is like the title character of this season, Penelope Featherington, and I just absolutely loved this. It felt like a romance novel truly come to life. It is more of a friends to lovers type situation. I don't think that is a spoiler. I think that is a pretty well-known fact about what this season was meant to entail, since it is based on the Bridgerton books. So if you haven't given it a watch yet, honestly, I feel like holiday is a great time to do it. I feel like Bridgerton sits in my head as a spring show, but if you didn't get a chance to watch it earlier this year, now could be a great time for a cozy little watch. My number 4 show of 2024 was the 4th season of Only Murders in the Building. I hope they make so many more seasons of this show. There is just something about the trifecta of Martin Short, Steve Martin, and Selena Gomez that is really like enjoyable and endearing. And I also like this because, unlike other, suspense novels and things like that I've read, I really am always pretty much kept on my toes about who, has committed the murders. And I like that the mystery is always kept alive for me. I thought this season also had a lot of different interesting kind of subplots going on as well. I really enjoyed all of the episodes kind of diving into different characters. I liked that they shook things up and, went to LA for a little bit of the season, but of course, coming back to New York, I think is key for the show. There was only one episode from this season that I think Andrew and I both looked at each other and we were like, we could have done without that one. That just kind of felt like a filler episode. It might have been either the penultimate episode or 3 episodes from the end. It's where they go to Charles's sister in Long Island. That particular episode was not for me, but every other episode I thought was really well done, had great pacing and great dialogue. My third best show of 2024 was season 28 of The Bachelor. This was Joey Graziadei's season. And if you have previously been a big fan of The Bachelor and you've fallen off of it in recent years, I actually talked a lot about this in my reality TV episode from earlier this year. I will link that one in the show notes if you want to go back and hear more of my thoughts about this. But I really feel like the last few years that show has dropped the ball in a very like disappointing and not entertaining kind of way. And this most recent season felt good to watch again. And it felt like the older school Bachelor. I won't say it felt like the very early seasons, like the 2004, 2005 seasons, because I've never seen those, but I started watching in like 2017, 2018. It felt like that time again. And not only was it a really beautiful love story that you kind of got to see unfold, but it also really highlighted, I think, female friendship. So if you have been out on The Bachelor for a little while and you've wanted to get back into it, I believe this most recent season should be streaming on Hulu. My second best TV show of 2024 was season 6 of Love Island USA. And I watched season 1 of Love Island USA when it first came out. I actually had done a partnership with them for Instagram, which was really exciting to me. And I thought it was okay. I definitely think that the UK seasons are they're totally on a different level, if we're being honest. And I'm talking about seasons 4 and 5 specifically. Those are the 2 seasons of the UK version of the show that I've seen. Season 6 of the USA version this year, though, like really brought the same energy. And I think it's proof that there is so much more that can happen in the world of these reality television shows, and specifically the reality dating shows, that goes beyond, again, just the baseline, like what you would expect from them. I also think it's fascinating to see the cast now that the show is over, like, what they're doing on social media, how they're kind of pursuing perhaps the influencer lifestyle. That is a topic that I'm really, really interested in, of reality television stars who kind of graduate and become social media influencers. If I didn't talk enough about it in the reality TV episode, I could absolutely see myself doing an entire episode about that in the future. But anyway, I think that show also really spotlights a lot of things that the Bachelor franchise should adopt, especially given the fact that it is 2024 and it's not 2004 back when the show initially started, or it might have started in 2002. But my point is that it feels like day and night watching Love Island compared to watching The Bachelor. It feels like you're watching something that's very current and modern and fun compared to something that feels a little stuck in the past. Not really Joey's season. Joey's season, I was all there for it, but I'm just saying in general, I think that the Bachelor could learn a lot from the Love Island presentation of everything. But I will say that my number one TV show of 2024 was Traitors Season 2. And Traitors Season 3 is coming out right at the beginning of 2025. I am so, so, so excited to watch this season. I actually feel giddy thinking about like me sitting down with a snack, turning the TV on, and seeing what unfolds. Traitors is basically a game of assassin played by all your favorite reality stars. What I love about Traitors is it really takes all of these reality stars from all different worlds, so to speak, like the Bachelor world, the Love Island world, the real world, the Survivor world, the Real Housewives world, and it brings everyone together in one place. And it's interesting to see how everyone's kind of preconceived versions of reality TV or what they're used to all plays in when they're all together and under like a new set of rules and circumstances. Alan Cumming is the best host, I think, in like all of reality television right now. I think he's up for an Emmy for his work in Traitors last season. It just really kept me on my toes. I had so much fun watching it, and I even got Andrew to watch a few episodes with me. Usually he bypasses any and all reality television. So I truly feel like this is a show that anyone and everyone can enjoy and get behind. And I'm so excited for season 3. I had a couple of honorable mentions for TV because I'm the worst. I know, I'm sorry. This is not a top 5, but I just wanted to also shout out Love is Blind season 7. I preferred Love is Blind season 6, but I think there were a lot of interesting takeaways from this most recent season. Also, Emily in Paris season 4. This show, again, like, may they make it for many, many years to come. I will watch 10 billion seasons of Emily in Paris. If they keep making it, I will be there to watch it. And I actually really liked how this season kept me on my toes and also had a little bit of a plot twist at the end that I really was not expecting. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what season 5 will hold in store for us. And I would be remiss to not mention House of the Dragon season 2. That show is just obviously very well put together from start to finish, from costumes to scenery to special effects. And I really enjoyed the kind of individual character development in this season. I wish that there was more overall interactions with all of my key favorite characters. They had a lot of episodes where people were kind of off on their own or like thinking about their own kind of situations and stuff like that. And it also felt like a lot of buildup in this season, and you were kind of waiting for the beat to drop, so to speak. And it just really kept building and building and building. So I have to say, it had me intrigued, and I'm definitely going to tune in to season 3. When are we going to get that? Probably in like 2030, right? They take forever to produce the Game of Thrones stuff. But all of that to say, there's been so much great television this year. I did not mean to talk for however long I talked about the very first section, but not all of these are going to be as in-depth as the TV. I just obviously have a lot of thoughts about it. Next up are my best books of 2024. These are in no particular order, but what worked out well about this list is I kind of have one recommendation from a lot of different genres. So the first book I wanted to recommend was Mad Honey, written by Jodi Picoult and Jennifer Finney Boylan. So first up, Jenny Boylan was actually my college professor at Barnard. I got to take her class for 2 semesters, one in the spring of my junior year, one in the spring of my senior year. And she is one of my all-time favorite teachers that I've ever had. I just feel like she is such a master of nonfiction writing and memoir writing. She also has a memoir called She's Not There that I would really recommend. But anyway, she collaborated on this book with Jodi Picoult, and it was told from like a dual perspective. Jodi wrote all of the chapters pretty much, except for 1 or 2, I think, for one character, and then Jenny wrote from the other character's point of view, which was really interesting. This book follows a mom and her son who live in New Hampshire and work on a family bee farm, kind of hence the name Mad Honey. And in the book, the son's girlfriend, who he goes to high school with, actually ends up dead. And so the book is kind of the aftermath of her death. One of the characters is the girl. So you're hearing about her like, a year before her death, 9 months before her death. You get to see and hear kind of what she was going through and what happened up until that point that she unfortunately died. And you also get to see the mother's perspective too. I would say this is in like the suspense slash kind of family drama genre. And I personally did not see a lot of the twists in the book coming, even though maybe I should have. I just really enjoyed the writing and the characters, and even though this was a little bit on the longer side, I forget how many pages it was, but I remember it being a thick book, I felt like I was constantly turning pages waiting to see what happened next. Next up is First Lie Wins by Ashley Elston. This is in the thriller genre, and it's basically the first chapter starts out with a woman and her boyfriend kind of just hanging out in his kitchen, making dinner. And, he's calling her by her name and they're talking. And she's like, but I'm not this person. That's not why I'm here. And it turns out she is involved in basically this very elaborate secret system that she got sucked into, where she basically gets a note about who the next client is. She has a goal of what her boss, who she's never met or seen, wants from that particular person. And she enters the situation, like with a fake ID, like in a new identity, and tries to help her boss get whatever he wants out of them. But it is a really interesting twisty and turny thriller that I personally am not even a thriller person, but I just loved this one so much because I was like, I need to know what the heck is going on with all of these people. If you haven't really been into the thriller genre before, I think this one could get you into it. Next up is a book called Margot's Got Money Troubles by Rufi Thorpe. I would say this is basically like a coming of age novel, but it's also like a family dynamics novel too. Our protagonist is Margot, who is a college student. She actually has an affair with her professor and ends up pregnant. She decides to keep the baby, and in order to support the baby, she chooses to start an OnlyFans account. And her father, who is a former pro wrestler, is also there to kind of provide some unexpected guidance and advice for her. When I read the description of this book, I just thought it was such a unique idea. And I think the idea and then how it all unfolded is really why this book ended up on the top of my list this year. There also ended up kind of being like an unexpected romance subplot. So I would call this a coming of age book, like I said, but I think there's a lot more there. And it wasn't a super long book either. So it's definitely one you could read pretty quickly. Next on my list was Uptime by Laura Mae Martin. Now, this is a nonfiction slash like self-help book that I read this year. My parents actually got me this for my birthday. And Laura Mae Martin, the author, is Google's productivity expert. So she helps all of Google employees stay on track with deadlines, have strategies to better improve how they schedule their time and how they manage their day-to-day workflow. And even though like maybe in the back of my head I knew a lot of this stuff, it was really helpful to have it pulled to the front of my head and be all in one kind of like go-to reference manual for me, so that if I'm ever feeling unproductive or like I need some help kind of coordinating my schedule or arranging my day, it's just such a helpful resource to physically have here with me that I know I can always go back to. And I really enjoy productivity and self-help books. And I would say that if you have a lot of like flexibility within your role at a company, or if you're self-employed and you want to better understand how to manage your time, take advantage of when you have a lot of energy and are kind of ready to go versus when you're not really feeling so great or you feel like you need a break. It just has so many helpful strategies and so many little aha moments all throughout it that made it a really worthwhile read for me. And then the last book I have on here is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This was my first Emily Henry book that I read this year. This is a romance novel. The book is basically an enemies to lovers romance between Nora, who is a publishing agent, and Charlie, who is a book editor. They both technically live and meet in New York City at first, and then Nora goes on a trip with her sister to a small town in North Carolina, which just so happens to be the town that her kind of biggest author that she represents wrote a book about that everybody like loves and idealizes. So she and her sister plan a trip there that's supposed to be like a getaway for her before she has her baby who's due soon. And in the small town, Nora keeps running into Charlie, the book editor. Again, I really enjoyed just the character development. I loved the dialogue in this book. And even though there were a lot of moving parts to the story, at its core, it is just a heartwarming romance. Let's move on to my favorite albums from the year. Now, this list is going to be pretty short because I primarily listen to the catalog of Taylor Allison Swift. So, of course, on the top of my list for this category is the Tortured Poets Department, which came out in April. If you guys want to hear my complete rankings of all the Taylor Swift albums, I will link that episode for you down below. But I have really come around on the Tortured Poets Department. When it first came out, I was like, I straight up do not like it. And it was one of those where the more that I listened, the more I really did enjoy it, especially the lyrics and especially just the very unfiltered emotional journey that we were taken on throughout that album. So that is why it is definitely my personal favorite album from the past year. And I also wanted to shout out two others that I listened to a decent amount. One was Short and Sweet by Sabrina Carpenter. I just thought this album was so catchy and that it was really like the perfect pop album. I feel like we haven't had an album like this in kind of a long time. I remember being so excited when like a new Britney Spears album would drop and like Hilary Duff. I don't know. I feel like we are kind of here with an extension of a little bit of that energy with Sabrina Carpenter and what she's managed to do. I definitely have FOMO that I did not see her on tour this year, but I have just really been enjoying her music that she's released, her outfits that she wears on tour, her content on social media. I just really feel like she is the whole package right now, and I'm excited to see what she does in 2025. I also added The Secrets of Us by Gracie Abrams to one of my favorite albums from this year. I think she is just definitely a student of the Taylor Swift school of bridge writing, but also more than that, just a true storyteller and a great lyricist. Every time I look up people's ages who are like so much more famous and so much more accomplished than me, I'm always a little bit like, what? It's just a bit of a jump scare. So she's 25, Gracie Abrams, and I mean, she is certainly having her moment right now. I looked into getting concert tickets for when she comes to Madison Square Garden, and they are so expensive. I was not really mentally prepared for that, so I probably won't go see her in person, but I definitely will continue to listen to her album, especially That's So True, on repeat for the rest of the year. Honestly, those three are the main albums that I wanted to spotlight that I felt like I actually listened to all the way through and had substantial opinions on. I also feel like this has been a big year for Chapel Roan and for Charlie XCX. I am definitely not as well versed in their music from this past year, but I've always really admired Charlie XCX. I feel like she was on our radar a lot when I was working at Nylon, and I believe she even guest edited an issue. So I'm just excited to see like she's really getting her moment this year. Let's move on to the best beauty product launches from this year. And this is kind of across all different categories: skincare, makeup, and hair. But again, in no particular order, one of my favorite products from this year is the Milk Makeup Cooling Water Jelly Tints. They first launched this product with 4 shades earlier this year, and they have since added 2 more shades to the mix. And this is one of those products that like I get in PR, and they send 4 shades. Maybe I'll usually keep like one and I'll give the rest to friends and family. I have wanted to hang on to every single one of these shades. I just absolutely love this. It's like a stick formula, and then the product itself is just like, it literally feels like you're putting jello on your face. I don't know how else to explain it. It is so cooling, it is so slick and really easy to blend and pigmented and satisfying, and I just think this is such a fun product for them and such like a good twist on their bronzing sticks and blush sticks that they've released in the past. It's just something totally new and inventive, but it also kind of feels like it's from the 90s in some way. I don't know. I just absolutely have been loving these. I feel like it's a product that, unless it like dries out, I don't really see how I would run out of it that quickly, because just a little bit goes such a long way. So shout out to the Milk Makeup team for that. And also a huge thank you to all 5 of these brands that I'm going to mention for having me on their PR lists this year. I feel like these 5 brands in particular have been very generous with their gifting, inviting me to events and just including me in all of these launches. And I really appreciate that so much. The next best beauty launch from this year was also the launch of this brand as a whole, and that is V&Co Beauty, and specifically their straight hair shampoo and conditioner. V&Co was started by the founders of Aussie Hair Care, so they've been in the game for a long time. And what I really like about this new line that they launched this year is it's all peptide-based hair care. So it's almost like adding these skincare ingredients into your hair care system, which I feel like I don't necessarily hear a lot of beauty brands talk about, or a lot of hair brands, I should say, unless they are very focused on their scalp health products. So I have just been loving the shampoo and conditioner. I have pin straight hair, as I have my entire life. And obviously I love a good, soft curl and running my hair through a curling iron. But just to know that on days when I want to leave my hair straight, that I have a science-backed shampoo and conditioner that are actually helping enhance my natural hair texture and making it look and feel really healthy, it just makes me so happy to know. Plus, you guys, it's really affordable in a world where everything is so expensive right now. It is $7.99 at Amazon, Target, and I use the straight hair one, but there's also a wavy version, a curly version, so definitely check them out. And I also think they have some new launches coming early next year. keep your eye on this brand. Another favorite launch from this year was Laneige. They launched a bouncy and firm sleeping mask. And not only do I actually love this product, it is so satisfying to kind of just slick all over my face as the last step in my evening skincare routine, but I also loved the rollout of this product. Laneige has Sydney Sweeney as the face of their brand. I don't know if that was just for this year or if they kind of just have an ongoing partnership with her, but I absolutely love seeing her demonstrate all of the products in the little social media videos and stuff that they do. I think the rollout is really cool. And when this product came delivered to me, it also came surrounded by a bunch of pink gumballs to kind of, as a nod back to the bouncy and firm sleeping mask. So I just thought like the rollout of all of it was great, the marketing, and of course, with all Laneige products, I think they are great, effective products with good ingredients. I feel like it's very rare for me to have good new foundations to recommend, but I did really want to recommend the One Size Weightless Turn Up the Beat Blurring Foundation. So One Size is Patrick Starr's brand, and it makes me so happy to see like an OG YouTuber have such a successful beauty brand and to just be beloved by content creators and celebrities and all of these people. It just, I don't know, it feels like watching beauty YouTube in 2016 and actually getting to like use all of the products that you're seeing on the screen. I really love this foundation and have been using it on days when I need a bit more of that full coverage. So it definitely is blurring, it definitely is weightless, and I really like that there's no cakiness to it once I apply. I also love the setting spray, the On Till Dawn setting spray from One Size. That is not a release from this year, but like that paired with this foundation are a match made in beauty YouTube heaven. And my last favorite product launch from the year actually just came out a few weeks ago. It is the CoverGirl Yummy Gloss Lip Plumpers. Now, I feel like I've definitely talked about the CoverGirl Yummy Lip Glosses on this podcast before, probably in the episode that we shot in the CoverGirl Content Studio. I believe that was episode 12. But these lip plumpers just came out right before holiday, and they are so stunningly beautiful. They definitely do have that tiny bit of tingle on your lips. One of mine also, right when I opened it up, kind of smelled like Robitussin to me, but that smell has since faded since I've been using it. I just wanted to be totally honest about the smell if that's something you're sensitive to. But like I said, I haven't really noticed it as much since. It kind of just has that like menthol-y undertone. I don't believe menthol is one of the ingredients. I think it's just the mint that causes that sensation, but I just thought I'd mention it in case you're sensitive. I absolutely love them though. I love the shimmer in them. I love the colors that they released, and I am just such a fan of both these and the original Yummy Glosses. Let's move on to my top 5 podcasts from 2025, and these are in order because I pulled this directly from my Spotify Wrapped. My number 5 podcast this year was Honey, We're Home, hosted by Caroline Crawford Patterson and Nicole Pellegrino. I got to meet both of these girls at a dinner for Dermablend in 2022, and I had been following along with them ever since then. I think they actually launched their podcast earlier this year, and I love everything that they talk about on there. They talk about marriage, they talk about relationships, friendships, life in your 30s, and I just really enjoy the banter. So it's definitely something that I like to have on a walk in the grocery store, running errands. It just feels like overhearing a conversation between two best friends. On a similar note, my number 4 podcast from this year was Match Made in Manhattan, hosted by Katie Bellotti, Colby Cassidy, and Adam Harrison. I have known and followed Katie for years. She obviously is a very well-known YouTuber and content creator in New York City. And this podcast, she and 2 of her best friends just talk about life in New York. I will say this podcast originally started as a dating and relationships podcast, and they do still talk about dating and relationships, but I do think the dynamic has shifted a little from the early days of the podcast, given that Katie now has a boyfriend, and we also have kind of branched out to get to hear about other topics in their life, like just life in New York in general and their jobs and all of that stuff, which I totally don't mind. I think as long as I like the hosts, which I do, I obviously enjoy them or it wouldn't have been on my Spotify Wrapped. that I'm willing to hear them talk about anything. So I just wanted to toss that out there. They definitely do still touch on dating and relationships. They answer audience advice questions and things like that. But if you were looking for like straight up dating stories, you just might not get that in every single episode. My number 3 podcast this year was Dear Shandy, hosted by Charlene Joint and Andy Levine. And I just love their relationship advice. I love their Bachelor recaps, their Love is Blind recaps. Charlene was a contestant on The Bachelor on Juan Pablo's season, so she has a lot of insider insight to share when she recaps reality dating shows, which her now husband Andy watches along with her. But I also just love the episodes where people write in with their questions and relationship problems. I just really enjoy hearing both of their perspectives, given that they've been married for quite a while, and what they think about certain relationship problems. And that's another one of those things where they could pretty much be talking about anything, and I will tune in. My number 2 podcast of the year was Game of Roses. If you are at all interested in reality television and pop culture and how all of these things kind of tie in together, this is a great podcast to listen to. Game of Roses started out just recapping The Bachelor as a sport, but they've definitely branched out to include other areas of reality television. I would say they are one of the main reasons that I started watching Traitors and Love is Blind and some of these other shows, because they started talking about them and I was really interested in the complete reality TV ecosystem and not just the Bachelor bubble that I kind of started out in. And they are just really thoughtful, methodical. They have all of the data and analytics to back up what they talk about. And it just feels like listening to the least boring, most well researched paper about, like, in this thesis, I will tell you about the state of reality television that I've ever heard. And I just always enjoy, listening to them chat and obviously their banter as well. And then my top podcast from this year was Gilmore to Say, hosted by Tara Llewellyn and Haley McIntosh. I love this show because it's not just a Gilmore Girls recap podcast. They really look at the show Gilmore Girls and do deep dives into different episodes about all different topics. They debate the best boyfriends, the best fights, the best Friday night dinners, and so much more in this show. I think the reason this was my top podcast of the year, obviously I loved it, one, but they do release 2 episodes a week typically, and I discovered it earlier this year, so it kind of became my go-to, and I started listening from the very beginning. So anytime I needed a podcast, I would basically just dive into their back catalog, all of which I think is really well done and fantastic. So if you are a fan of Gilmore Girls, you have to listen to this podcast, but only listen to it if you have watched everything, including A Year in the Life, because otherwise there will be spoilers. Okay, I think these next 2 categories I can do in a bit more of a rapid fire sense, since now I've been talking for almost an hour in my raw recording before editing. But I wanted to write down the top 5 what I think best pop culture moments of the year were. And these are all moments that, like, you just had to talk to someone about them. Like, they were happening and you were just like, we need to discuss this, or like, I need to hop on this trend. Number 1 is the 2024 Grimace Mets. And I just want to say, I have been a Mets fan for my entire life. My dad is a huge Mets fan, and getting to see the Mets thrive this season has made up for, I would say, a lot of previous years of just, like, low expectations and disappointment. They just had such a fun season. There was so much energy around them. I loved the random superstitions and the grimace of it all. And I just will always remember this season and look back on it really fondly. And it makes me really excited to see what happens next year, especially after they just signed Juan Soto. Another major pop culture moment, I would say, is Taylor and Travis at the Super Bowl. I mean, that was just the moment I think that we were all waiting to see and witness. I do think that Taylor is using her magical powers somehow to help the Chiefs have, like, an even more insane season than usual, because they're just annoyingly good, is the only way to describe the Chiefs. They are annoyingly good. Emphasis on annoying. But even though I'm not a big fan of the Chiefs overall, I do like Travis and I like him and Taylor together. And just seeing that, like, happy moment after they won at the Super Bowl was just, I think also obviously tied into that was the Eras Tour in 2024. I have more to say about that on a different point later on this list, but the Eras Tour was just a magical, special place where girlhood was celebrated and it felt like nothing bad could happen. And I know this was technically a 2023 thing as well, but now that I got to experience it this year, I just have to shout it out once again as something that will truly go down in history, especially given that it is one of the best selling tours of all time. Honorable mention here goes to Justin Timberlake getting pulled over in the Hamptons and the guy arresting him, not understanding who he was, and he was saying this is going to affect the tour, and he said what tour, and Justin said the world tour. That was definitely something fun to text about as well. Another trend was the very demure, very mindful trend started by TikTok creator Jules LeBron. I just think that the widespread nature of this trend was so fascinating to watch, and it made me so excited to see a creator get so much credit and recognition for a trend that was started, and to be able to take ownership of that content, to monetize it, to, basically like blow up overnight, essentially. It was cool to still see a creator be able to do that this year, and to also see how it impacted, fashion, beauty, and other markets too, because of brands taking note of the power of TikTok and the power of a trend and really jumping on it. I just think that is such a cool moment for the influencer marketing industry and for Jules, obviously, as well. And the last one was just the New York City earthquake, because that day I was actually taking photos for like the announcement that I was launching a podcast. So I was like sitting here at my desk with my mic, and I was here by myself with my tripod shooting, and I literally thought like a car hit our building, and I was just like, what is going on? And I know this is, not that big a deal for people who live on the West Coast, but the fact that we had like a New York City earthquake, I enjoyed that little pop culture moment and immediately logging onto Twitter to see what everyone said. Okay, in no particular order, these were my 5 favorite content creators to follow this year. Number 1 was Jules Acree. I just absolutely love all of her videos. She is another one of those people where anything she creates, I will pretty much watch it, which even though, some of her content has changed over the last year, she became a mom this year, I still was watching all of the, nursery resets and cleaning the house and, day in my life as a new mom vlogs, because I am still super interested in her, even if the content topic has changed slightly or it doesn't necessarily mesh up with what my life looks like right now. I just love her. She is an organized queen. She creates these feel good, slow living vlogs. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely check her out. I subscribed to Caroline Winkler this year. My friend Alyssa suggested her to me, and I just love all of her YouTube videos. And as Alyssa told me when I first followed her, she does a lot of interior design and home content, but she also still manages to share personal stories and anecdotes, add a lot of humor to her videos, and it really feels a little bit more like vlog style through a lifestyle lens. And I also really enjoy all of her branded content too. She has definitely made me rethink how I approach branded content, and I think that is something really amazing. Like, I think that's a very unique quality for a creator to have. Definitely have been enjoying her videos. Lindsay Silverman is one of my go-to recommendations whenever people are looking for creators to follow, and she is the founder of Hotel Lobby Candle. Obviously love that brand, and she is just known for her very honest recommendations. She has a very engaged and loyal audience, and I just love seeing her life and what she's up to, what she's buying, where she's traveling to. Another creator I started following on YouTube this year is My Fam. She is only 21 years old, but she has millions of YouTube subscribers, and I just love her chaotic day in the life vlogs when she's running around New York on her city bike, running back and forth to her office. I loved her Fashion Week vlogs in particular from this year. And I also watched her interview on Colin and Samir's channel, and I thought it was very, very eye-opening. So I've been definitely keeping my eye on her. And last but not least is Amanda Pulitano, fellow Hoboken girly. And I met her earlier this year at an Amika event, and she told me she did vlogs on YouTube, and I was like, great, sign me up. So I have just been watching her vlogs pretty much ever since. And I love that she always keeps it real. I love that she shows like her family and friends in her videos. And I just really enjoy all of her vlogs and content. Plus, I like seeing, where she hangs out in Hoboken too. So that's always fun. Okay. And then my last few categories are more personal to me. So I'm going to try to power through because now I've officially been talking for more than an hour. But the top brand events I attended this year, number one was Made on YouTube. I did a whole YouTube video about how that event kind of flipped me in a 180 and gave me new perspective on where I want to go with my content and what I want to do in this career. I just thought it was absolutely incredible. Number two was the Nicole Miller holiday dinner at Saki no Hana. Not only was all the food amazing, but I think the company was even better. Just looking around that room and seeing who I was surrounded by, like my friend Caroline, the Suarez sisters, my friend Belle, Abby and Miranda, some new friends as well. It just like really made me feel so happy and like I was really in the right place. It just was one of those rooms that meant a lot to me to be in. Not to mention the brand lent me a dress beforehand. I did a whole vlog about that on my YouTube channel too, if you want to see more details. Another event that I loved was Sunday Riley did a skincare masterclass for us all. I love an interactive event where I can really get to learn about the products and try them out myself. So the fact that I got to go fresh faced and really use everything and go through the steps was such a better learning experience for me than just getting handed a bag of products, as I'm leaving an event. My number 4 event of the year was with Pond's, and they actually sent me an email that said, mystery brand, like drugstore brand releases new moisturizer, like come experience with a facial at Chill House. I liked this event a lot because number one, it was very individual. Like I went in, I did my facial, I got to hear about the product, I got to pick out some goodies to take with me, and then I basically just Ubered there and back, and they did give me an Uber code, which was very nice. But I also just loved the little element of mystery to it and intrigue. I feel like that was really fun, even though I still knew like where I was going, about how long it would take, and generally what to expect from the event. And then another event was the return of Limited 2 Rooftop Launch Party. My friend Lauren brought me to this as her plus one, and we just had a great nostalgic time. This was one of those summer events where you have a rooftop event and you're just praying it doesn't rain. You're hoping that it's not too hot, and the weather was perfect. The vibes were right. All of the early 90s feels came flooding right back. And it's cool that Limited 2 has returned. I still waiting for more adult sizes, obviously, of everything, but I really enjoyed that event and obviously going with Lauren. And one honorable mention shout out was Amika hosted an event in Soho this year that I thought was really fun for the launch of their new dry shampoo. Some of my proudest career moments from this year, in no particular order, were number one, getting invited to Made on YouTube. I can't say enough good things about that event. It was so well put together, and the fact that they also put me up in a hotel for the night was so incredible. I also got to attend an event at Instagram's headquarters this year where we got to meet and network with different brand representatives to hear more about what they look for when they work with influencers, and also just get to meet and network with some fellow creators who I'm so glad that I got a chance to meet. Meta also sent me to speak at an event at Google this year, which was so cool. And I was on a panel with 3 other creators who are all just incredible. We got to talk about social media marketing trends, again, how brands can work better with influencers, and to be asked to do that by Meta was extremely cool. I also had some really exciting quotes in the press this year. I was quoted in the Wall Street Journal talking about the return and rise of CoverGirl. I was quoted in Forbes talking about how a potential TikTok ban could impact content creators. That article was from earlier this year, but I will link it in the show notes. I feel like it's worth a read again, given current events. And my friend Alana started working at Glamour, and I have been giving some recommendations for different commerce articles. So 2 that I was quoted in were the best wide leg jeans and the best white sneakers. And last but not least, the best trips that I took this year, topping the list has to be the honeymoon in New Zealand with Andrew. That trip was just so beyond incredible. New Zealand will always hold a special place in my heart. given all of the exciting things that we got to experience when we were there on both the North and South Islands. Second best trip of the year, very close second, but obviously can't top the honeymoon, was going to Amsterdam to see the Eras tour, and then also going to Brussels for the day too. I mean, I don't need to explain why that was amazing. It was just so incredible. And the fact that Andrew made it work within, limited time off to come with me and coordinate this whole trip is just something that I can never thank him enough for. Next on the list was an overnight trip that I did with my mom this year. We went to the Maker Hotel for just one night in Hudson for her birthday in June, and we just had the nicest time together. I drove up to her house and picked her up and drove us up to Hudson. We got to park at the hotel. We stayed in the writer room at the Maker, which was just so divine. Like, I would go back again in a heartbeat if I were invited there. And I treated her to dinner at the Maker. We went antiquing and walked around. We had a cozy breakfast the next morning. It was just so nice. And obviously, any quality time with my mom is a huge added bonus. Also, this year was a bachelorette trip to Cape May for my cousin Caitlin. And this is probably the only bachelorette trip that I left feeling like recharged and wishing that it could go on for longer compared to, oh boy, get me out of here, Sunday scaries. I'm not feeling too hot right now. And that's just a testament to the type of person Caitlin is. We had such a nice weekend. It was more wholesome than anything, even though we did get to go to some wineries and hang out. We also just sat at the house for hours and talked, and we had such a nice time, and I am so nostalgic for that already. And then these two were kind of tied. I got to do 2 trips with Andrew and my parents for 2 of my cousins' weddings this year. One was my cousin Caitlin's wedding in Washington State in White Salmon, which was so much fun, an area of the country that I never really envisioned visiting before, and I'm so glad we got to go to. And then the other one was a trip to Chicago for my cousin Megan's wedding. We had such a blast. They had a beautiful day, which I'm so grateful for. So it was out on a golf course, and we got to hang out with Caitlin Patton while we were there too. We got to go to a game at Wrigley Field, which was so fun. We stayed at the Hoxton, which was beautiful. Just such an all around amazing trip too. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed one from my proudest career moments. I was just looking back. I was just a few days ago featured on the Tamron Hall show. That was my first ever national TV appearance, which was so exciting, and hopefully more of those to come in 2025. I told you it was a crazy year. Well, if you've made it to this point in the episode, thank you so much for being here with me and being part of my year. I am really grateful and glad that I decided to take the plunge and start this podcast this year. Actually, right when I was attending my cousin's wedding was the weekend that the first episode came out back in May. So just wanted to say thank you so much again. And as a reminder, you can support Create and Consume for free by doing any of the following. You can leave me Apple and Spotify ratings and reviews. You can like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you're watching this episode on YouTube. You can follow along at Create and Consume Pod on Instagram and TikTok. You can send this episode to a friend who may enjoy it. And as always, don't forget to check out createandconsumepodcast.com for episode recaps and more. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you in 2025.